Okay, so I'm back, Gail Lau, talking about industrial cybersecurity, and with me again is Patrick Miller, CEO of Ampere. So this next question is about network monitoring and threat detection. Patrick, what are we monitoring in the ICS world in terms of devices and traffic?
So from a devices perspective, we're monitoring all of the industrial things out there that are keeping our lights on, our water flowing, our gas flowing, our transportation moving. They're not like a Windows or a Mac or even a Unix device in most cases. These are purpose-built. They do one thing, they open a valve, they sense water in an area, like the quality of the water, or they open a breaker to stop power, for example. What we're listening to from a traffic perspective is they all talk to each other. All these devices have to talk and communicate as part of a system. So what we're trying to make sure is these devices are doing all the things they should be doing and not doing things they shouldn't be doing. So we're monitoring as they're talking to each other and what they're doing at the same time.
So we're doing that how?
In most cases, these devices can't take like a software agent that it gets installed on it. Like I said, it's purpose built. It doesn't really have, you can't install like an antivirus agent on it, for example. So we have to listen to the network to see how they're talking. And from there, we can get a sense of what's normal. We can say, well, this always happens, or that never happens. Why was that happening? So we can just look at kind of the network traffic and see how the devices all talk to each other and look for anomalous things is really what we're looking for.
So it makes sense we should be doing this, right? But do we have to?
Well, in some cases, yes. If you are part of the electric sector, then yes, there's some elements there that you have to do. It's finding its way into the gas space with the TSA pipeline safety guidelines and security directives. It's making its way through chemical and water, likely in some others as well, as mandates. Now, for now, it's pretty much electric is the only one that has to do it. And there is some components that have to be done in the gas space. But other than that, it's probably you should be doing this because it's very good for your operations, not the least of which is you'll know security issues, but you also know if some humans did something wrong, right? Accidents happen too.
So we should be doing this. It makes sense. But what would happen if we don't?
Right. Well, if you don't, then things can happen in your environment that you don't know about. And that can cause everything from, outages, disruption of whatever your operation is, whether it's electricity, water, gas, whatever, or it could affect a product that's coming out from a quality perspective. All of these things from a network kind of anomaly detection perspective, you're really just trying to make sure that things are operating the way you're expecting them to. And if they're not, you need to know why. That could be, like I said, malicious. It could be accidental. It could be just the machines have had a problem and they need to operate a different way.
You've mentioned in the past the concept of kind of like a black box for critical infrastructure. How do we get started and how do we get ready to do such a thing as a black box?
So the concept of the black box is like a flight recorder kind of thing. At least in the last executive order of 14028, there was the discussion of something called a cyber NTSB. And that's what the real NTSB does when there's a plane crash or other things. They show up and they're an independent body that does an investigation. And the first thing they go for, at least in plane crashes, is that black box because it contains all of that important data for those important critical components on the plane. Even in other areas, if there's like a train crash or something, they get as much data as they can. So having something like that for a cyber incident would be tremendously useful, especially in critical infrastructure. Because right now, as it stands, whenever there's an incident, some organizations either have more data or don't have enough data, or they give you access to that data if they do have it, that kind of thing. So this concept of actually monitoring enough of the right things in the right ways so that you or a cyber NTSB could actually effectively respond, that's the goal. That's what we're trying to do.
Makes sense. That's a great analogy. I appreciate that very much. The black box isn't something I can just go out and buy one, right?
Yeah, this isn't something you just drop in and turn on, right? A lot of these networks have to be designed with this in mind. And they were not designed with this in mind originally. They were designed for ease of operation in a lot of cases. Typically with critical infrastructure, they're really concerned mostly about uptime and availability to make sure the machines are always running. It's how all of our original things were built, and we're changing that mindset to segment them off, separate them, isolate them, and then put some listening devices in there and somehow get that traffic, that security data out of that network into another area where it can get analyzed by humans and then the issue of just getting the humans to analyze it, and then taking action when you find something. So it's not just something you just drop in and turn on. There's a lot of process and a lot of design and a lot of human components that come with it as well.
Can you give us an example of a situation that's happened where they weren't prepared for the situation, maybe they didn't have a black box, and what could have been, how this could have been better?
Yeah, so I think probably the most famous one would be the Triton-Trisis Hatman. It's got several names. That's the name of basically an attack that happened on what's called a safety instrumentation system. And these are the systems that keep big things from going boom. And the hackers got into this system and they manipulated it in a way that could have caused real big problems. They made mistakes and shut off the plant. That's the only way they found out. They should have found out earlier using something like these tools to notice this long before it got to that stage. So that's a case where using this kind of anomaly detection would have given them notice well in advance of, hoping that that attacker makes an accident and somehow, gives them notice. That's not your best strategy. So that's probably your best one, I think, has got as far as, public notice.
So in more recent years, we've heard of these hackers getting in and actually sending different signals off to the HMI, so people aren't aware of what's really happening. How does that change things today?
These tools can tell you when something like that happens, and they're looking for basically, if anything out of the ordinary shows up, they're going to let you know. And it's using a varied set of different types of detection. But if something like that were happening, like HMIs were getting different commands or sending different commands or getting different results back from some of the equipment, for example, fake results back from equipment to make an HMI think it's seeing what it's not seeing, these tools will definitely notice that and show you.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining me once again. I sure appreciate it, and I sure hope our audience does too. Take care. Thanks.